Hello and welcome to APICS Extra Live, Communicate with Impact with Linda Trignano. My name is Christopher Jablonski, staff editor with APICS, and I'll be your host for today's broadcast. Please note that this presentation is being recorded and will be available at apics.org/extralive. At the end of the presentation, we'll save time for a question and answer session. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today's broadcast. Linda Trignano is a highly effective communications coach and consultant with over 25 years' experience. Through her firm, Trignano Consulting, she provides coaching and consulting to individuals and business groups to improve their performance through effective communication skills training. Areas of practice include training and developing and coaching groups and business managers to enhance their communication skills. As part of her training, Linda utilizes state-of-the-art DISC Insight assessments focusing on leadership, team building, 4 generations working together, change management, and highly effective sales communication styles. So let's all please welcome Linda Trignano. Linda?
Hello, everyone. My goal today is to illustrate how good communication skills are essential to your effectiveness and success on the job, and to convince you to take action toward improving your communication skills. I plan to give you some effective communication tips and also highlight a state-of-the-art communication tool that is being used by many individuals and corporations today. About 70 to 80% of a typical business day is spent communicating, and that makes effective communication a critical piece in the supply chain process. To do your job well, it's critical that you communicate clearly and concisely with many different people on many different levels and in many different ways. In a recent survey, 5,000 executives from U.S. companies from various industries and various types of businesses, both large and small, were asked what was the most important skill they needed in order to do their job well as the leader of the company. Almost all of them ranked effective communication as the #1 skill they needed to do their job well. In my experience as a communication coach, I have found that many people believe that they communicate well enough and do not need to focus on improving their communication skills. However, many of you probably have felt the pressures and face the challenges, both personally and professionally in today's workplace, that often are the results of ineffective or poor communication. So the question is, what's in it for you? There are major benefits, and I've listed a few here, that you get from being an effective communicator, which affects all of your personal and professional interactions. Your ability to communicate well and effectively produces confidence, which is an important factor in your success on the job. When you exhibit confidence, other people notice. When you project confidence, everything about you shifts, and people that you meet or work with can feel and see your confidence. When you feel confident, you feel good about yourself. When you feel good about yourself, your self-esteem improves. Confidence and self-esteem go hand in hand. Your skill at communicating well positively affects the people you work with and interact with, and that improves your professional image. This in turn leads to better business and personal relationships. Good communication skills lead to less stress because projects and work efforts are moved forward more efficiently. By doing the work right the first time because of effective communication throughout the process, stress levels are greatly reduced. Mastering communication skills ensures that you're able to express yourself in such a way as to accurately convey exactly what you mean without being misunderstood or misinterpreted. Poor communications are at the heart of many workplace problems. There are so many ways for communications to break down and negatively impact the process that we often don't attribute the problem to communication, but rather we think the problem lies elsewhere. Yet, if you ask what the biggest people problem is at work, most would cite a symptom of poor communication, such as low morale, poor teamwork, or resistance, rather than looking at the root cause, which is often a lack of or poor communication. Let me illustrate this. I was called in to assist a client in improving communications during a company-wide initiative that would affect every one of the 150-plus jobs in the company. The plan included a major overhaul of the outdated computer system, which touched every job from the COO to manufacturing to building maintenance. Every job function would be changing, and the employees were asked to look at each job function they performed and to rethink the way the work was accomplished. Many employees exhibited major resistance to the transition and reluctance to embrace reorganizing the business processes. The company's leadership knew that employee resistance could undermine the project and have significant negative business implications. Staff members wanted to know what was going on and wanted to feel a part of the process of change. Basically, the WIFM, what's in it for me questions needed to be answered for them in order for them to buy into the transition process. It was important for managers to understand that each employee would be affected differently by the transition. The managers also needed to understand that the skills to navigate through such wide-sweeping changes would be difficult for some to take the time, and also it would be difficult for them to permeate the changes throughout the new work structure. Open and broad communication was the key factor in helping to facilitate the plan. To the company's credit, they decided to proactively help employees deal with the transition and all of the emotions the transition brought up. I addressed the lack of communication from the leadership team regarding the proposed changes and the impact on the employees' jobs. I did this by creating a process for all to openly express both positive and negative feelings that needed to be resolved. They were then able to communicate on a level that was built on mutual trust and were much more engaged in the process than before, which was a major step toward improving morale and successfully moving the project forward. Once the employees realized that they were part of the process, they became more willing to become part of the solution. The change in attitude was palpable and enabled the company to successfully implement the transition program. As this example illustrates, the entire team has to be engaged in the process as well as the solution, ideally as early on in the process as feasible, with open communications and trust as a foundational cornerstone. Communication problems in the workplace can and do cost your company productivity and money. Without effective communication, the end result is conflict, poor productivity, low morale, poor teamwork, and a host of other issues that one becomes forced to deal with. Remember, you need both the ability to communicate well and work competence in order to do an effective and good job. In order to provide some tips to build more effective communications, I want to link a few of the basics that are needed. Be aware that your communication is conveyed through a variety of channels, including in-person, email, phone, Skype, and social media. There are also the challenges in navigating global time zones, cultural differences, and the many intertwined functions in the supply chain. Add all of this to today's hectic 24/7 always-on connections and the complex nature of supply chain management. Communications can often break down and impede effectiveness and negatively affect your desired results. With so many messages and information coming at us, our attention spans are actually getting shorter. Tony Carlson, author of the book The How of Wow, states, "We have programmed ourselves to tune out information very quickly, to filter out information that does not have immediate, tangible relevance to us." Carlson goes on to say, "It needs to be that way in order for us to get through the day." However, it makes your job tough if your goal is to cut through all that noise and not only be heard, but also be remembered. In order to manage your supply chain responsibilities more effectively, you need to break through some of that noise. Just a note on social media. Social media allows both you and your company the opportunity to connect with a wide variety of individuals on a much more personal level than ever before. This is both good news and bad news. Used properly, it can be an effective means of communicating. Used improperly, it can cause communication problems which can negatively affect you and or your company. Always be aware of how you look and sound online. Others use your digital information to assess you and your quality of knowledge, skills, and expertise. Online, you're always visible to others. Remember, you can and should control your online image. We all have our own unique style of communicating with others. The various ways to communicate are illustrated here, and they all come together to present an impression of you. You have a lot of control over the image that you create by paying attention to some of the details and working to improve some of the ways that I have illustrated here, some of the ways that you come across in these areas. Whether you're attending a meeting with your team, speaking to a vendor on the phone or through email, meeting with the boss, or if you are the boss, or if you're looking for your next promotion, managing the impression you make and how you come across to others determines your success or failure. Seemingly small things can make a big difference in interactions with others. Being aware of some of the subtle yet important ways you communicate and using this knowledge to your advantage will lead to helpful, impactful communication. Whoever said you can't judge a book by its cover failed to note that most people do. When you meet someone face-to-face, about 93% of how you're judged is based on nonverbal communication, your appearance, and your body language. Only about 7% of how you are judged is influenced by the words you speak. When your initial encounter is over the phone, 70% of how you're perceived is based on your tone of voice and 30% on your words. Clearly, it's not what you say, it's the way that you say it that makes the impact. There are numerous elements of what we call body language. They include physical features, both changeable and unchangeable features such as eye contact, the gestures and signals you send to others at a conscious and unconscious level, such as rolling your eyes, and the third piece is the personal space that you use when communicating with others. All of them come together to send a message from your body as opposed to from your words. Remember to manage your body language to ensure that it's congruent with your words. If your body language and words are not in sync, most people believe your body language over your words. Body language is a nonverbal language, but it is a language, and it definitely affects how you come across, how you're perceived by others. Let me give you an example of how body language is communicated. I consulted with an area hospital addressing a major poor communication issue between the hospital staff and the doctors. The staff repeatedly complained about a lack of respect when spoken to, as well as when they posed questions to one or some of the doctors. HR attempted to address the communication issues, but was unable to convince either side to alter their behavior. I conducted a training session focused on each individual's style of communicating and then on understanding others' style of communicating. When the session began, as soon as someone entered the room, I could see from their body language the negative, hostile behavior on both sides. Their body language said, without saying a word, "I don't want to be here." Others' body said, "I don't need this training." Others' body said, "I'm too busy to take time out of my schedule." And my personal favorite nonverbal, "I'm not the one with the problem." Their attitudes showed through their body language. Through a series of exercises designed to help each party see the other's point of view, as well as gain an understanding of how each is perceived when a poor attitude is allowed to permeate behavior, understanding and acceptance was embraced. It was a good starting point and provided HR a foundation from which to set behavior norms based on understanding and respect for the other's style of communicating. Remember, your body speaks. Be aware of the message your body language may be sending. Another important aspect is your voice. Your voice is an important element in how you communicate. Be aware of the combined effects of your voice. Your words, tempo, and tone should all work together. With tempo, if you speak too fast, you may be projecting nervousness or impatience. Your tone projects the quality of your message. For example, a harsh tone is usually perceived negatively. A steady, strong tone conveys confidence and competence best. Practice speaking in a steady, strong tone, and you will communicate more effectively and impactfully. Remember the old adage, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Darlene Price, author of Well-Said Presentations and Conversations That Get Results, says, and I agree, words are powerful. They have the ability to inspire, motivate, and persuade, or discourage, dismiss, and dissuade. Price goes on to say, with your words, you wield the power to plant seeds of either success or failure in the minds of another. And in the process, you reveal who you are, how you think, and what you believe. If possible, prepare for what you want to say and how you want to say it. Be aware of the impact your words are having on your listener, or, said another way, think before you speak. Once your words are spoken, you cannot unspeak them. Many have regretted making that mistake. 2 additional tips. The most powerful word in the English language is someone's name. Everyone likes the sound of their own name. Practice using the other person's name when speaking to them. It's a good habit to get into and will go a long way toward improving your communications. The second tip is about the word but. When you put but in the middle of a sentence, you're usually diminishing one half of the sentence. Practice replacing but with the phrase yes and. You will be amazed at how powerful that combination is in helping you have impactful communications with another. Here are a few more tips and additional words and phrases to be mindful of. 1. Limit starting with you, because starting a directive sentence with the word you can come across as challenging to the recipient. You want me to do what? You really believe that? The second tip is use yes as often as possible. Yes is an extremely powerful and affirmative word which can set a positive toned communication. The third tip, limit using the word no. The word no can stop a conversation or set a negatively toned communication. Even if you disagree or feel the answer is no, you can still answer yes on occasion and clarify the statement according to your perspective. The fourth tip, why can be perceived as a challenging word, even if you don't mean it to come across that way. Why don't you do that for me? Why is this necessary? It sounds challenging to the listener. And the fifth tip, don't quickly jump to telling another you're wrong. It is an extremely negative, challenging way to start a conversation or a sentence and often leads to confrontation and defensiveness. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand, but with the intent to reply. For many, listening is a time for them to formulate an answer to what's being said. That is not a good communication practice. Focus on active and effective listening in order to communicate with impact. Active listening is a communication technique that combines hearing with understanding and requires a connection with the speaker and the listener. One way to implement active listening is to restate or paraphrase what you've heard in your own words and, moreover, to confirm the understanding of both parties. Effective listening is a skill in which multiple senses are used to grasp messages. Effective listening is not just about using the ears to hear, but it also involves using other senses, such as eyes, to observe body language and capture any underlying unspoken message. Listening is a skill that should be learned, practiced, and continually improved upon. Your goal as an effective listener is to fully understand the speaker's experience and his or her point of view. Here are 2 tips to listen actively and effectively. First, as I've mentioned, take a moment when necessary to feed back what you've heard to the speaker and to check for accurate understanding. And the second, help others feel heard by allowing them to finish speaking before you answer and focus on nonverbal messages. Let me leave this topic with an interesting visual for you. We listen with our face as well as our bodies. What does this mean? In conversation, practice managing your facial expression, eye contact, and gestures. Nodding your head, for example, indicates to the listener or the speaker that you are listening and engaged in the conversation. Asking questions is powerful in a conversation. Questions provide greater understanding and participation. People like working with leaders and team members who ask for their input and really listen for their answers. Use questions in an appropriate manner. I want to give you a few pointers on asking questions. The first, try to ask well-thought-out questions. The second, be sure that you're not asking questions that you already know the answer to. Third, too many questions put you in a one-down or less powerful position in another's eyes. Fourth, ask questions in such a way that you have enough details to result in receiving the information that you have sought. And the fifth way, use open-ended questions as a helpful technique to get the answers you're looking for. Questions that use the who, what, where, when, and how technique often result in better results. For example, tell me how the data in this spreadsheet was derived. Another example, what benefits can you provide? Both open up the conversation through their questions. And the final tip, ask detailed questions to either confirm what has been communicated or to get further clarification. The items that I've listed on this slide are good pointers to keep in mind when you think about questions and their value to you and the organization. Attitude is a way of looking at life, a way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. Your attitude is revealed every time you speak, act, or communicate through any of the channels that I've been talking about today. Remember that your attitude shows through just about every way you communicate with another person. Be aware of your own attitude and shortcomings. Some good advice, sometimes seeking feedback from others in an effort to improve your own attitude helps tremendously in improving your communication skills. Respect different viewpoints. Not everyone sees the world the way you do. Differences are what move all of us forward. Learn to welcome and embrace differences. As managers, you're asked to deal with cultural differences, language barriers, various experience levels, and most certainly different degrees of communication ability. Respect another's ideas and allow their input, suggestions, and concerns, and you will become a much more effective manager. The better you are at allowing others the space they need to express themselves, the better you become at leading and helping your team members expand their knowledge and grow their careers. Remember, people want to be heard and appreciated for their input. When you make assumptions, you base your understanding and belief on what you think is true. That may or may not be correct, since an assumption is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof. Therefore, the best communication tool is to check your understanding by asking rather than assuming. Skillful communicators frequently probe their own assumptions and challenge them. This sets the stage for other people to do the same. When people focus on the data that they're missing, it allows them to move forward to resolve the problem rather than holding on to their assumption. Be certain that all your communication reflects competence in these 3 areas. Each one, attitude, respect, and managing assumptions, is equally important in powering up your communication effectiveness. Remember, you need both the ability to communicate well and competence to communicate with impact. I want to just sum up these basic communication tools and tactics for you with this slide. There are 3 communication power tools I want to leave you with. The first I've been talking about is this communication piece through active listening and asking questions. The second is to embrace change and encourage others to do the same. The picture here illustrates the same old thinking gives you the same old results. Embracing change is one tool, one path, a very good path around that. And finally, respect different viewpoints. Not everybody sees the world as you do. Many times, we all see it very differently. So, what if people had their needs written all over them? It would help a lot, but unfortunately, they don't. Have you ever wondered why connecting with some people is easier for you than with others? Maybe you've noticed that you relate better to colleagues who focus more on creating momentum and inspiring others. Or maybe you're more comfortable working with those who take a spontaneous, energetic approach than those who work at a steadier, more cautious pace. Or perhaps you relate best to people who are more expressive than restrained. Different people respond to different styles of leadership and communication. Finding the right way to interact with each person provides you with the best communication results and fosters a positive attitude and engagement with your team and the workplace. One of my coaching clients was working at a large pharmaceutical company for a number of years. Each year, her work was evaluated highly during her year-end performance review and throughout the year. Her communication skills with her manager were effective and allowed for a smooth working relationship based on experience and trust. Then, reorganization resulted in my client being assigned to a new work group along with a new manager. With the new manager came a new way of communicating, a different style, and a different way of interacting with him. The result of 2 very different styles of communicating was interactions that were filled with resistance and conflict. Both sides felt the other was responsible for the disconnect. I worked with my client to help her become aware of her own style of communicating, and then we took the assessment a step further and worked at understanding the manager's style of communicating and how my client could flex her communication to be received better by the manager. As I've said, we each have our own unique appearance, skills, talents, behaviors, and our own unique way of doing things and relating to others. And we all have people who we find it hard to communicate with or work with. Behavior and communication styles together create a perception in the mind of others. Learning to navigate through some of these workplace issues is truly the challenge in today's workplace. The better you understand yourself and your preferred style of communicating, the better you're able to communicate and connect with others. The DISC model that you see here helps you understand yourself and understand why other people do some of the things they do. It helps you see the impact your personal behavior has on the people you interact with on a daily basis. Additionally, the DISC model helps you understand different people's needs and it gives you the tools to easily flex your style to build stronger relationships by communicating better. A good starting point is to understand that most of us have a dominant disc style blended with one or more of the other styles. However, all disc communication styles are equally valuable, and a team of people with a balance of each of the styles can be a very effective and strong team. The insights you gain can quickly and easily be put into action so you can see the benefits immediately. Like I said when I started this seminar, DISC is a very effective tool used by many of the top corporations today. So I want to just delve into this so I can give you tools today so that you can use this and think about those that you work with and interact on a daily basis. The words around the circle that you see in front of you relate to the styles and how they prefer to interact. If you think of the top half of this circle as those that are more verbal, more outgoing, they're fast-paced, assertive, oftentimes bold. The bottom half, the C and the S, this group of people, they're thoughtful. I call them internal thinkers. They have a moderate pace. They're usually methodical, calm, careful. And again, I'd like you to think about this in context of those that you work with in each day. If you think of the circle on the right-hand side, the I and the S, those are the people that are people-focused. They thrive in people relationships. And on the other half of the circle, the D and the C, they are more data-focused. Doesn't mean they are not people-focused. It means their preferred style is to look at the data. Let me give you just a little bit deeper look at that, again, while you consider those that you work with. The D style, and you can see from the words around the wheel, this style likes action, result, and competency. They have a direct, assertive manner, very strong ego. They thrive in a competitive environment and go for results. This group, you might frequently hear them say, just give me the facts, just the bottom line. That's the information that they want, and they want it quickly. They're quick to make decisions. Unlike some other groups who might take time to assess data, this group collects information quickly and is quick to make decisions. They are, as I said, task-oriented. Their mantra is at the bottom here, look at my accomplishments. They like results. The next style is the I, or the influencer. The three words around their part of the circle, action, enthusiasm, and relationships, are what they naturally gravitate towards. This group is outgoing, optimistic. They are very enthusiastic people lovers. They are very much considered to be emotional or very verbal. And they like recognition. If you have somebody on your team or you work with somebody that has this tendency, recognizing the work that they do by offering them thank you or acknowledging what they're doing will go a long way to helping your relationship. This group's mantra is, hey, look at me. And the S group, and we're still on the right-hand side of the circle, their three words are relationship, sincerity, and dependability. They are very steady, loyal individuals. Their strong suit is patient and good listener. This group in particular is less likely to enjoy change. It doesn't mean they can't handle change. It just means that their natural tendency is to prefer the status quo. If I use the example that I illustrated earlier with regard to the computer switch in the company that affected all of the jobs, those that fell into this category needed more information in order to feel comfortable getting on board and handling the changes that were about to come down. On occasion, they needed to be talked to or additional information shared. or afforded the opportunity to ask additional questions. That kind of flexing one's style in order to accommodate others and their communication needs is a tremendous asset when you're trying to communicate better. This group is people-oriented. And by the way, if this group is managing a vendor and they've been with that vendor for a lot of years, one of the things that would have to happen in order for them to lead that, in order to dislodge from their loyalty, would be a lot of proof in there as to why they should. They are loyal, and they are loyal because they've done their work and they understand the reasons for their decisions. Their mantra is, notice how well liked I am. And the final style that I want you to look at and consider for your own day-to-day interactions is the C, or Conscientious Style. This group is the efficient, accurate, and precise group. They gather information. They gather enough information for them to feel comfortable making a decision and moving forward. Knowing that about this group helps you work with them in a slightly different way. For example, if I were to have a project with a due date tomorrow, and this group was the group giving me the information, but did not have enough data for them to feel comfortable moving the decision forward, I might word my questions to them. The due date is tomorrow. I know you do not feel you have enough information to make the decision. What can we do in here in order for you to get the information you need and for me to have the due date of tomorrow met? That kind of flexing, when possible. I'm not implying that every decision can have that kind of timeline, but you can see here by illustration how working within their own style can help you achieve the progress that you need. And by the way, I've listed the strengths of each group here for you to see, but strengths used to an excess often become a weakness. For example, if a C person did not have enough information to feel comfortable moving forward, they might indeed feel that they were stymieing the progress of the project and not moving forward. So any of the strengths used to excess for each of us could easily become a weakness. The value to the organization to understand this is tremendous. It helps smooth the progress of communication in a way that everyone feels that they are communicating in a highly effective way. Here are some of the assessments that I use. There are many: time management, stress management, for you to consider and think about. It helps to build more effective relationships and helps understand your style of communicating and others. Let me just say here that improving communications by understanding your own style and communicating with others and then extending that style and acceptance to allow for others' communication style leads to better working relationships that are based on trust and understanding. So the question that I want to pose to you is, how can you improve your communication effectiveness starting right now? A study from Stanford University Research Institute says that 75% of long-term job success depends on your communication skills, 25% on your technical knowledge. The research goes on to say that the money you make in any endeavor is determined only about 12.5% by your knowledge and about 87.5% by your ability to deal with people. I trust that I've convinced you to take some action toward improving your communication skills today for yourself and your team. For those of you that would like to take advantage of my coaching or DISC profile, please reach out and contact me.
If you would like more information about the coaching services I provide, or would like to request that I speak at your company or group, you can reach me at trignanoconsulting.com and invite you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or email. Or you can phone me at 973-722-9961.
Thank you, Linda. And of course, now we've saved a little time for Q&A. So as a reminder, if you look at the right toolbar on your screen, you'll see a questions box. And if you have a question for Linda right now, please feel free to ask, and we'll take a few moments and see what kind of questions are coming in. All right, Linda, here's our first question. This isn't really phrased like a question, so I'm just going to read it, and feel free to respond to it as you will. I usually try to avoid direct communication and avoid direct speech. I prefer communication via email, and my communication via email is so effective, and my ideas are appreciated by my boss. I usually dislike to communicate with others.
So the question is there is the mode of communication? This person feels that it's effective? Is that the question?
I feel like this question is leading towards that they're saying they're a good email communicator, but not necessarily so much in person.
Well, I think that in-person communications are a little bit more tricky, and a lot of people do feel uncomfortable with direct communication. You know, I hear a lot these days with regard to different generations in the workplace, and you know, each generation has their own preferred way of communicating, and sometimes those don't always overlap, and there is some conflict and disconnect. My best advice is to begin building your skills in all areas of communicating. In person, face-to-face, email, each brings some value based on the mode of communication, but there's also some drawbacks. You know, I often hear people say when they're just using email, sometimes words can be misconstrued, a meaning can be misunderstood, and that always does not foster the best working relationships. Sometimes it might be more difficult, but it is more effective to simply stop, pick up the phone, and address an issue or have a discussion directly in order to move the communication forward quickly, effectively, and in the direction that you want.
Thanks, Linda. All right, our next question is a little more straightforward. Can people, given time, change their DISC profile?
I think that our preferred way of communicating is pretty well set. It's very different from personality. It's your preferred way. And in fact, when you are under stress, you communicate and your style is a little more different. It might be a little more assertive. The basic answer to that question is no, but most of us are very good intuitively at flexing our style. So our preferred style might be to be one way. I'll give you a great concrete example. You're walking along chatting with your peers. You get into the elevator, the doors open, and the president of the company enters the elevator. Suddenly, you will most likely flex your communication to be a little bit more formal, if that is the tone of your company. We do it intuitively. We know when we should or should not flex. We're not basically altering our style. We're just flexing our style, which, by the way, is a great skill to have, because we need to flex our style based on the needs of the person we're speaking to. That is a great communication enhancer.
All right, well, moving on. Our next question is, what can I do when I'm trying to listen to somebody, but the other person won't stop talking?
So I'm assuming, and I did have a slide about assuming, I'm assuming that you wanted to get the other person to stop talking. And my favorite tactic is, if they are talking continuously, is to wait for them to take a breath and then jump in with a question. Jumping in with a question might open the doors for them to do more talking. If you feel that might be the case, you might wait for them to have a tiny break in the conversation and then step in with, well, from my point of view, and then take the floor and begin speaking, if you will. It's a tactic, and one needs to practice it with some tact. What you do depends on who the speaker is. So the example I'm giving you cannot necessarily be applied across the board. I caution you to temper what I say based on who you're listening to at the moment. Good conversation, by the way, should have a 50-50 or thereabouts cadence, speaking half the time, listening half the time, as a general rule.
All right, thank you. Well, switching directions with this question, how might you advise bringing up the need for communications training with your colleagues? I think it's something that everybody talks about, but it's rarely ever directly addressed.
I think many times communication problems present themselves as symptoms. And talking about those symptoms, switching the conversation from the symptoms to perhaps we can get to the root cause by addressing some of the ways that we communicate would help move this project forward, would help our work group communicate better with less conflict, less effort. But I think the door is open by first addressing the symptoms, being willing to talk about the symptoms, and then immediately following that up with, what could be the communication underlying issues, and making the suggestion and taking the action to begin learning different communication tools. Many times people think learning communication tactics take a long time. I think if there is some understanding, some training, some basic guidelines, and then those guidelines for good communication are followed through. For example, the team leader continually goes back to, these are our standards, let's adhere to them. We seem to have slipped away from them a little, but it's that combination of first acknowledging them, some training, and then following them. Even if you slip, getting back to following them is really the best way to go about integrating them into and making changes. In my mind, the worst path is to make no changes. Beginning is a good step.
And we still have time for a couple more questions, so let's get right to them. And there are so many great ones, it's hard to pick. Let's go with this. I'm currently leading a team of highly experienced coworkers. Most of my team members are twice my age. Do you have any communication tips specifically for building trust with more experienced team members?
My advice is to really learn, understand, and acknowledge that different people like information and interaction, communication interaction, in different ways. One of the persistent things that I hear is that those that are in a younger generation managing the generation above them or more, is they have a style of communicating. And the assumption is often that that style is the best style, the right style, or they don't even think about it. It just comes so natural to them that they just use one style. Best advice, expand your knowledge of the different ways to communicate based on others' needs. And I really am talking about that DISC style. Some people like a lot of information, some people don't, etc. Learning those styles and then learning how to flex your interactions with them will go a long way. A tremendous help to increasing your communication skills.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's move right on. Sometimes I think about what I want to say and how to say it. But when the time comes, I forget most of it and only am able to communicate about 50% of what I planned. I later say, I should have brought that up. How can I improve this?
I'm a big believer in jotting down a few notes. I recently took a course on memory, and his advice actually was counter to what I'm saying. His advice was to not write things down, because when you write them down, you tend to forget them. But if you go into a meeting, if you go into a conversation, and you want to cover 5 points, for example, I think having 5 lines with a note, a memory jogger, to make sure that you cover what you need to will enhance your communication skills. I think there's nothing wrong with taking a quick glance at, a small note to make sure that you cover what you need to. I have an interview background with a large corporation, and we took notes. And, on occasion, I might say, and I think this is a great phrase to use, just give me a moment. I want to make sure that I covered all the points that I need to. I find a lot of times people in conversation are afraid to hold the conversation and then give an expression of what they need. Just give me a moment here. I'd like to just collect my thoughts. Holding the conversation so that you have time to gather your thoughts is a good tool to use. There are many, many communication tools in that vein, but to answer the question directly, write down a few notes and bring them with you to the conversation, so that the best thing you can do is to make sure you say what you want to say in a way that you want to say it, and you cover all the points. Yeah, a memory jogger might just help in there.
Thanks very much. And let's try this one for size. Do you think that the way that you dress plays a big role in communication?
I would say 100% yes. The way that you dress is nonverbal communication. I have always heard, dress for the job you want, not for the one you have. Let me go back to my interviewing days and how people appeared before me when they're interviewing. You know, I know that today business attire is more relaxed, but there's still that fine line between being professional and being too relaxed. I say find that fine line. Casual is not the issue. It is too casual that is the issue. Your body language is assessed immediately by how you appear. I've always said you step in the room and you extend your hand to say hello, and people have already made a lot of assumptions about you, correct or incorrect, but for you to know that going into any situation, I say make sure you pick up that one tool and dress the best that you feel you can for the situation you're going to be in. You will, without a doubt, be assessed by your clothing.
Mm-hmm. I think this is going to have to be our last question, so let's see what you can take from this one. Do you think that people can exhibit traits from multiple profiles of the disc?
Each person that I have met usually is a combination of a few. The disc profile nowadays uses a shading method so that if you happen to be a D with C tendencies, the shading covers that area of the wheel, if you will. Most people are not one pure style. On occasion, some are. I just recently had occasion to speak with someone from Tufts Medical Center in Boston, and she was a pure D. Dot was right in the middle at the edge of the circle. Unusual. Most of us are a combination. But always remember, most of us can flex into another style when we need to. For example, I personally am one of those people that spread over two particular styles. I am not data or number oriented, but you can be sure when I need to be, when my accountant says to be there, I can mentally shift there, and we all can do that. The disc is about your preferred style, the style you naturally gravitate towards. Under stress, we all flex. When we want to, we can flex. That's really the key. That's the power of knowing your style and other people's style. It truly gives you powerful communication skills by learning those two things.
Thanks, Linda. And with that, I believe we're just about out of time. So there was a lot of very interesting questions we weren't able to get to. If you feel like your question wasn't addressed, please feel free to send it to Linda at her contact information on the screen. And with that, we'll have to adjourn this edition of APICS Extra Live. Once again, thank you, Linda, for your time today.
Thank you. It was great being with you, and I hope I've motivated all of you to communicate better.
Thank you to all our participants today. This concludes today's edition of APICS Extra Live. All content and materials included in this edition of APICS Extra Live are the property of APICS and Trig Nano Consulting